What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the PodVlog. I'm here with Corey Hiben. He's a business owner, podcast host. He loves the cold. How do you feel about the weather?
It's nothing compared to Minnesota, man.
There you go. He's a savage. He's awesome. We're about to go crush a Murph workout. We're gonna modify it a little bit, but yeah, you ready, man?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Got the run.
Squats is
I think the pull-ups are the hardest part.
100 pull-ups sounds impossible.
Yeah. You go to a CrossFitter and do the CrossFit pull-ups, so. There we go. Learning how to CrossFit today. It's all good for me. All right, man. Corey Hiben.
Yo, bro.
That was a great workout, man.
The Murph 63.
You made it seem easy, and I had to really struggle to get my words out. So,
Which is crazy for a guy that has done an Ironman. I would have thought that would have been potatoes for you.
Yeah, maybe a year or two ago. But yeah, man, you did good.
Likewise.
Reminds me, you do a lot of calisthenics. What are you doing right now for fitness?
My rule now has literally just been movement every day. I used to compete in like physique shows, and I used to have like all the structure, and I used to track every lift and every workout, and had like this app, I think it was called Strong. And now it's just like I'm in this new phase of life where it's really just about being healthy and fit enough to do the actual things I want to do, as opposed to the focus being like the actual health and fitness. Now the focus is like what I'm working on. Health and fitness is just a vehicle to be able to do those things. So just movement every day.
I like that. So you're a podcast host, you own a business. Let's talk about fitness and your businesses. So what are your businesses? What's your main business or businesses that you do to make money?
Yeah, so my main bread and butter is website design and development for health and fitness professionals. So I come from both the fitness and the healthcare industry. I used to work as a personal trainer back in the day at LA Fitness.
Nice.
Still to this day have a membership and pay like literally nothing, because when I left there, I sold myself a gym membership and made commission on that membership.
There you go.
And I've kept it ever since. So I probably have the cheapest gym membership you can get there.
There you go. That's perfect, dude. That's a hack right there.
Yeah.
10 seconds in.
And then, so then after that, I actually used to work in healthcare as an occupational therapist by trade. And so I worked in outpatient orthopedics, specifically in hand therapy. So I worked with hand surgeons, like tendon ruptures, wrist fractures, shoulder injuries, that sort of thing.
Did you go to school to do that?
Yeah, so I went to school in Iowa, which I don't recommend anybody goes to.
Yeah, you didn't have a great time?
No, it was fine. It served its purpose. I call it doing my time.
Yeah.
Like I went to Iowa, I did my time, went to school, and then came out. But yeah, I went to a private college in Iowa for a master's in occupational therapy.
Nice.
And yeah, it was good. It was a good way to get me out of Minnesota, which is where I'm originally from. And it was a small, big enough stepping stone away from Minnesota to just experience life on my own for a while. Because like when you stay in a local area like your college town or your hometown, it's really, really, really hard to just like grow and develop as a human. It's like you get stuck in your routines and the same conversations with the same people, and it's tough. And I know you moved around a lot, so that probably had to facilitate a lot of that.
I feel the same. I think even in a city like Austin, like I've been here 10 years and I'm like, I kind of need something, right? I need a fresh start in some way. even if that's just traveling for like extended periods of time.
Totally.
If you can do that, I think that it's important because it forces you to like see what you like and meet new people. It puts you in positions where you have to grow. You can't be stagnant because you have no choice. You can't just like move to a new city and sit in your apartment.
100%.
I guess you could, but
100%.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah, I always describe it as like shaking the snow globe. I think if you don't have to intentionally do it, but there has to be some avenue in your life to like shake the way you view the world. And I think travel is arguably the best way to do that. And it doesn't have to be extreme, right? It can literally just be going to another country and seeing that people can live in a completely different way than you do, with completely different values, but are still thriving and happy and doing great.
Yeah.
And to recognize that your way of doing it isn't the only way. Like,
definitely.
That's so important. So yeah, to go back to what I was talking about is, I was in Iowa 2.5 years, grad school program, got out, worked in outpatient orthopedics for 4 years, and this is a whole nother rabbit hole, but like, it didn't take me long to realize how broken the healthcare system is in this country, which everybody recognizes.
Yeah.
And so I worked with a hand surgeon, not exaggerating, who saw 70 to 80 patients a day.
Wow.
And
as a surgeon.
Yes.
That's insane.
So like average patient seat time was like 2 to 3 minutes.
In surgery?
Not in surgery,
Okay.
like consultation type
Still.
stuff. Even actually consultation and also injections, because like they do a lot of cortisone injections and stuff like that.
Right.
So like just like firing through people, shooting needles in people, just one after the other. And anyone can tell you that that's not healthcare.
Right.
That's a patient mill.
Right.
And nothing against him as a human. I mean, he's jammed into a system that requires that to keep the lights on, because everything that's insurance-based requires that you see as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time possible,
right?
Which is the model that we're built on right now, which is super unfortunate. And so for me, I recognized in that time, it took a long time, is like I eventually reached a point where the fear of the unknown became greater than the pain of staying the same. Is that I knew if I stayed there and continued to do what I was going to do, I was going to continue to be miserable. Versus the fear of breaking out and trying to figure out how to do something else in my life was a lot more appealing than staying there.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And so it really became this point of like two worlds were able to clash together for me, in that I loved the people that I got to work with, right? I love personal trainers and chiros and doctors and physical therapists and occupational therapists. People in those spaces, in the health and fitness and wellness spaces, they are generally pretty educated. They want to help people. They want to make the world a better place. They just often get jammed into a system that doesn't allow them to do that. Whether it's a box gym, whether it's a healthcare facility, whether it's some big corporate insurance company, they're just jammed in the system and they're like, fit this mold,
right?
Otherwise go somewhere else, right? It's so unfortunate.
People that are in service in some way are owned by a business.
Totally.
So I feel the same way. So you took that and then learned how to code and do web development and put the two together?
I know, right? Isn't that crazy? People are always asking me that, like, how the hell did you get into like development and like marketing?
Well, you're smart enough. I'm sure that you figured it out.
Yeah. So to circle all the way back to answer that question, so prior to even getting into school, so my undergrad degree is in exercise science. Prior to that, my initial major was actually computer science.
Nice.
And so I grew up total nerd, total dork, dude. Like playing video games, like totally like typical boy, right? Like learning how to program when I was like 12 years old. I bought my first like C++ programming book when I was like 13. Started building computers. Even to the point where I remember I used to like go to like competitions for like competitive gaming.
Nice.
Like to the point where like this was back when like you had a giant monitor and your giant like desktop computer and you had to seriously, and we had to like plug in all our computers together of like our giant like LAN tournament to be able to compete, so there's no lag. Right.
That's funny, bro. You're old, man.
I know. I am old.
I know what it is, so I'm not much different.
Yeah, I do remember dial-up though. But so yeah, that has always been in my history, and it's always a skill set that I've had. Honestly, I don't really have any regrets in life, but like that is one thing that I don't know. I always wonder like what that could have turned into. If I would have continued that path of computer science and like gone in that rabbit hole, I always wonder is like, would I have ended up in Silicon Valley during the boom, and like what kind of tech companies would I be involved with? And like, I have no regrets around it, but I do always think about like, that would have been an interesting journey, right? Had I gone that path.
You may not have been as happy, you know, because you've got the healthcare, and if it's something you're passionate about, like you still have those skills. Mm-hmm. It's still a great time to start a business.
Yeah.
Could have started one that could have failed.
That's true, man.
During that whole boom, during that whole bubble.
That's a very good point. I probably would have started a bunch of them and failed multiple of them. But
I mean, could have done really well, but you still have plenty of time.
But yeah, so to really fully answer your question is like, so that's where I took those two worlds and I brought them together. And it's been really cool because like there's not a lot of people that can do that or have said they've been able to do that. Is that I've not really met anybody that has this like technical background and this love and fitness or passion for health and fitness and like brought them together in the way that I have. Yeah. And so like I feel like that's been a big contributor to the success I've had is I can speak the language of somebody that understands health and fitness and healthcare and the pains and the challenges and the struggles of like what it takes to get a patient and to go cash-based and to start a personal training online business and all those challenges. I understand it because like I used to be in there. I used to work there, right? Yeah. I was also, when I used to work both as a trainer and a healthcare professional, I was also responsible for my own marketing. So that was a big part of something I was already starting to learn as a skill set as I was in those professions of like having to market myself and having the technical backgrounds of knowing how to turn on a computer and write up an automation system and whatever the case might be.
Which is huge because I don't enjoy technology. Like I don't enjoy
none of my clients
learning it. Yeah. I can do it, but like I had a tech business and just learning JavaScript, I was like, dude, my partner who's a programmer could spend 5 minutes not only learning something, but implementing it all the way through when it would take me months. So yeah, it's impressive.
That's the pain point I feel most often is because all my clients are what I used to be, right? They're personal trainers, they're gym owners, they're chiros, physical therapists, OTs, whatever. Yeah. None of them like technology. That's why they got into
very difficult.
That's why they got into the profession. Right. Like they like the science, they like the anatomy, they like the physiology, they like to nerd out on their latest like biohacking podcast. Yeah. They like that shit. Right. I'm like, no, I'll take your technical side. Yeah. Like I enjoy that. That's what I grew up on. I thrived on that. Like give me some headphones and don't talk to me for 4 hours, I'll be great.
Like, yeah, but you'll sit there for 4 hours and build a program and I'll have 2 lines of fucked up JavaScript. Insane. It's like my sister and I were talking yesterday. She's finishing up school and she's taking physics, or physics 2, one of the two. And she's already taken organic chemistry and all that. And she's like, I would rather go take OChem twice, again, than finish this physics class. And I was like, I totally agree. Totally agree. And it's not quite the same, but it's pretty similar. Like the mindsets are the same, I feel like.
No, so it's exactly the same. I love Matthew McConaughey. And like, I don't know if you've read his book, Green Lights, but
I've skimmed through it. My girlfriend loved it. So
I've read it twice now. It's great. Yeah. And there's one little nugget that I always pull out of there and I think about a lot. And he talks about how we're really bad at knowing what we want, but we're really good at knowing what we don't like. Yeah. Right? And so like so much of like figuring out what we should be doing is trial and error. It's because like you don't know until you try. Like it's like, how do you know what you like to eat? Right. Well, you tried a bunch of foods, right? Like how do you know if you like chemistry versus biology versus...
Gotta go do it.
Right. You gotta go freaking taste it and test it.
So that's a kind of a good segue because I think that I can only speak for myself, but one of my biggest weaknesses is like decision. Like I want this, I know it's gonna suck, but I'm gonna see this through, which is why I'm not a doctor, which is why I don't like have a tech business because kind of went through, but there were all these other cool things. So how did you decide like this is what I'm gonna do? Whether it was the occupational therapy or this business now?
Exactly to your point, man. That's a perfect segue. We must do this regularly.
I've done a few.
That's exactly what I did. I started tasting stuff. I started learning some of the newer programming languages. I initially thought like that was the route that I wanted to go, was to get back into more like the development world of like learning some of the newer technologies, getting on board with like a health or fitness tech company and actually being a developer of some form in that industry. And I actually haven't told this story. I don't know if I've ever told this story on a show. But perfect. I fully thought I was going to go work for a tech company. And I was like, I'm coming at this from the angle of like, I know how to speak the language, like I was saying. I know the health, I know the fitness, I know how to talk to your customers.
Yeah.
Plus I have this technical skill. I started applying to all these jobs, and I kid you not, I probably got over 100 like template style rejection letters from like different health and tech and fitness tech companies.
Yeah.
That are basically like, you don't have enough experience, was like 9 times out of 10 of what it was. Right. And I remember like being so insanely frustrated in the sense that I started reading this book. It was called Choose Yourself by James Altucher. This book changed me, dude. And like the thing I've always appreciated about books is like people always ask like, what's your favorite book? And I feel like that's a wrong question. I feel like a better question to ask is like, what was the right book in the right moment of your life?
That's a good point.
I feel like that's a better determinant to like determine like where you were and like what the words were that you needed to hear to make a difference. Because I think you could read the same book 100 times, but depending upon where you're in your life, it's going to be a different experience. And so for me, that book was the right read at the right time.
Yeah.
And really the punchline is exactly as the title describes, of like choosing yourself. Stop asking for permission. I was looking for permission. I was looking for somebody to send me an email or a letter that's like, we're going to hire you, you're great. And that was the wrong way to approach what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And so after getting rejected literally over 100 times, I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna fucking choose myself and hire myself.
Do it myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's literally what I did. And so it started as, I was like, okay, how can I just begin to start adding value to people? And so what I started doing is I started reaching out to like health coaches and trainers and like people that were more early stages in their business of like health and fitness and wellness. And I realized that like their website was rather trash because they built it on some like Wix template and totally messed it up or whatever the case might be, of like some way that I could see their online presence just like wasn't thriving and I could step in and help. And I literally started working for free. And I was like, hey, like, if you just let me take a stab at your website, I could probably make some changes that may get you some more clients or get you some more leads or like improve the design or whatever the case might be. Yeah. And the very first person I started working with, shout out to Lori, she was one of the very first people that she's like, yeah, whatever, like, come on. Like, she gave me access to her website, started helping her out. And like, I literally went into it. And it's so funny because like when you go into it with the mentality of, look, I'm gonna work for free, I just wanna help you and just like try to improve whatever you have going on in your business. It's so funny because like the kickback was always like, they wanted to pay me.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Is like, she's like, no, like I need to give you something. Like I can't just like let you work for free. And I was like, no, listen, I'm just interested in like this relationship.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in like providing the best value possible to try to help you out and like see where that relationship can go. And it literally sprouted into tons of other clients. She started pulling me into webinars with all these other health coaches. She's actually like a health coach for health coaches. Nice. She obviously has this like massive network of people that have no interest in touching technology, but are in that space and industry. And literally through that one relationship, it started sprouting into just all sorts of other connections. It started growing into, I started charging more and more money. I started like helping out more and more people, started getting more referrals. And it's kind of just been a snowball effect ever since then of like, starting to work for free, and now it's like, I don't want to throw numbers out, but it's a lot more now to work with me.
I mean, you don't have to, but that's one of the things I like to ask. First of all, that's one of the keys to influence, right? It's like, if you can, sounds terrible, but if you can have somebody indebted to you, it's much more powerful. You don't want to go into it with that idea, but it's the idea of like, I think in the book Influence, they use the chocolate on the pillow in the hotel.
Yep.
Or the balloon for kids when you walk into a restaurant or something like that. Like you just get a gift and they're like, wow, this place is better. Like my kid's happy. I don't even know if the food was good, but like we walked in and people were happy. They did a great job.
Yep.
But one of the things I like to ask, if you feel good sharing it, is like, how much money is your business making? How much do you charge relatively? Like, has it been successful? And is it something that other people can do?
Totally. Yeah. So when I first started, it's so funny how like so much, I mean, there's this like combination of confidence and competence is what I think a lot about. I think that I did the right thing where I was at that time to charge free to basically nothing to like build a website. Like I was offering to build websites for like $500.
Yeah.
Which like if you asked me to do that now, I would hang up the phone. I wouldn't really, but I'd be like, you should
I've
probably go
signed
to
invoices for $100,000 websites.
Yeah.
For different businesses.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And but no, honestly, what I would honestly do is I'd probably tell you like this probably we're misaligned. This probably isn't a good fit. I'd recommend going check out like Fiverr or Upwork or one of these like freelance type websites, right? That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah.
Or sign up on Squarespace and try to do it yourself. And so that though was probably the right thing to do at that time because my competence wasn't that high, honestly. It's like, yeah, I understood design and development. I understood how to build a website, but I didn't understand business enough to understand what it actually takes to build a website is one thing, to build a site that actually attracts traffic,
Funnel.
and
all kinds of
converts
things.
those leads to actual emails or contacts or whatever it is,
Right.
is a whole different game.
Right.
And that's a level of skill that does require a certain person to be able to do, especially when it comes to industries, is like every industry has different angles that they need to take to be able to actually get traffic and to convert that traffic.
Right.
So like then it was like, yeah, I was like charging like $500 a site. And like, I thought that was a lot of money. And I was like, this is crazy. People are paying me to build websites. Now it's closer to like, I'm in the $5,000 to $10,000 is probably the average I would say I charge for most sites. I take on, I don't know the exact numbers per year, but like that's probably 2 to 3 sites a month.
Is it just you, or do you have employees?
Yep.
It's just you?
So you bring up a good point with that, is like, I'm a pretty big believer that I think solopreneurship is the future of a lot of stuff, especially in the tech world, or especially in the online world, I should say, not the tech world, but like anyone building an online business, I would argue could probably build a very healthy business on your own. With the exception of maybe you might need some BAs or some like additional help, but like for the most part with no code platforms, automations, and maybe a VA to help handle some tasks, you could pretty much do anything yourself online.
If you're by yourself with low to no overhead, after taxes, you can make 6 figures with, like you said, 1 client at your level, or 2 or 3 clients, or maybe even at your $500 if you're doing one-off and you don't have to maintain things. Like, get 10 clients and you can live comfortably.
Totally.
Even in a place like Austin.
100%.
So it's less about like how much money you're making and more just for my audience, people that are getting out of the military or sports or whatever, like they're in the same boat trying to find what's next. Don't want to go work for someone, don't want to like fall into something like the healthcare field and get stuck in a rat race. So the option is entrepreneurship, not because it's cool, but because it's the best way to like use their skill set.
Totally. And you really, I don't want to like make it sound like it's easy. It's not easy, but it is, the concept is very simple, right? Is like, if you have a skill, regardless of whatever it is, like maybe it's websites, maybe it's you just understand marketing, maybe you just understand development, maybe you just understand social media, maybe you're really good at social media. Like if you have just one skill that you can offer and you can show other people that it can add value to their business, that could probably be a 6-figure business.
Yeah.
And you could be fine on
Which,
that.
like you said, it's not that hard. It's simple. It may be difficult to get there, but
Totally.
especially depending on the business. So I want to move forward just a little bit. What's your business called? I'll tag it. If you want new clients, I'll drop it in there.
Dope.
What's it called?
It's called Andro Brands, ANDRO. It's actually named after my grandpa. My grandpa actually passed away earlier this year.
Sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. He was 90, I might get this wrong, 95?
Wow.
But yeah, he lived a very long, full life. He was very ready. He was an amazing guy. And yeah, it's a testament to him. He was the kind of guy that worked really hard, but did it with a smile on his face. And so that's kind of the mission behind it, is to continue that legacy. And so, yeah.
You're a happy guy. Like every time I see you, you're energetic, you're ready to go.
Yeah,
so
man.
Carrying it on. So Andro Brands, if you need a website from a pro, I'll put that in there.
Thanks.
And then the podcast, you just started or relatively recently started The Health Hustle.
Yeah, man.
How's that going?
Oh my gosh, what a freaking journey. It started out literally as just a way to connect with the clients I was already working with.
Yeah.
So I was having conversations with the people I worked with, like PTs, OTs, chiros, doctors, people in the health fitness space. And it's grown into so much more than that, which is something I never expected it to be. And that shift really happened. And so this is a tip for anybody that's like wanting to create content or wanting to get in the content game, which I would argue everyone should, or at least probably wants to, I would assume. And it's I learned from a mentor is don't try to be the best, just be the only. And so that's when I really pivoted the show of like, it used to be the health hustle, right? I was talking to anyone really anywhere that had a health or fitness business, and I just wanted to hear the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
Cool, fine, not that remarkable.
Not unique.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
And then, right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're spot on. Is like, and then I realized like, okay, now I'm competing with everyone and their mom, literally. And so then I twisted it to just Austin, Texas, because I realized that nobody is specifically focused on the Austin, Texas community in that space. Health and fitness entrepreneurship in Austin, Texas. I'm the only one doing it, which means I'm the worst and the best podcast on that topic, right?
That's all you need.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm the only. And so tip for anyone that's looking to create a show is like, just find that angle or that uniqueness that just makes you the only, because like that makes it worth talking about. It feels like you're gonna limit who your opportunities are or like limit your audience, but you don't need a huge audience. You just need a small audience of loyal fans that tell their friends about it. That's the best way to do it.
1,000 true fans. And especially in a city like Austin, I mean, almost 2 million people here now. It's like we were talking about earlier, one of the biggest places for health, for tech, for fitness. Like, it's a very forward city and it's growing every day.
Yep.
So for people like you and I, you're building this massive network just within that tiny little niche. So.
And it's shocking, like, how many people there actually are once you get into it. Like, even if you're into cat sweaters, I would argue there's probably way more people in that than you realize.
Yeah.
Because like once you start getting into that rabbit hole of like whatever it is that sparks your curiosity, all of a sudden you're like, oh, like there's a lot of other people like me. I'm not that unique.
Yeah.
Like even though you pick a unique niche, you're probably not that unique.
Yeah.
So.
This is totally unrelated and probably terrible, but like we just watched Dahmer on Netflix.
Okay.
And at the end, like my mom studies mental health. She works with like criminals, basically. She works for the public defender in a mental health caseload. So she sees stuff like that all the time. So I kind of knew the stories, but at the very end they highlight like he goes to prison and develops all these fans. Like this terrible person is getting fan mail and money, and there's like copycats. So it's a really bad example, but like
it's a great example.
The niche is there, you know?
It's a great example. That's what you're looking for though, is like you're looking for people that love it and hate it. You're looking for loyalty, you're looking for community, you're looking for connection. Like, how can you be the person that's just a community organizer? How can you be the person that's just like, this is our thing, this is what we're into, and we're gonna bring people together that also believe in this thing.
Yeah.
Like that is the best way to build an audience or a community or whatever it is, which I argue everyone wants.
Yeah.
There's no question everybody wants that. It's just like, who is that for you, right? And choosing that.
Yeah. I like it. So you chose health and fitness because of your background, like you said.
Yeah.
Why fitness? Do you like working out?
I'll tell you the story. So when I was about 17, I was in a relationship with a girl. We were together for, I don't know what it was, a couple of years at that time. This was in high school.
Yeah.
And it was one of those like young and dumb and hormonal and you think you're gonna be together type situations because you're an idiot and you're 17. Yeah.
At 17.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yes.
I think.
Right. And she broke up with me. Crushed me. Like, arguably, I would say the darkest place I'd ever been in my entire life. Like, definitely the saddest I've ever been, like slightly suicidal for sure. And at the time, my mom now calls it like my dark side because she saw what was happening and she can like joke about it now. And at the time, my mom knew what was going on, and like, I remember just like being in the basement, just miserable and sad and crying and just like not wanting to be around anymore. And she's like, why don't you just like come to the gym with me? I was like,
nice.
Right, exactly.
Mom got you started.
Exactly. And she was going to the local YMCA at the time. And I was like, yeah, man, whatever, fuck it, I'll try anything. Like, I'm horribly depressed.
Yeah.
And went to the gym, worked out, did the typical bro, like curls, bench press, total bro workout, right?
Yeah.
And left the gym. And I wasn't like cured, but I left the gym and I remember just feeling better. Not like great, but I was like, man, I'm a little less sad. Like, that's interesting. And then like a few days went by, my mom invited me again, I went again. And again, I left and I was like, man, like I feel a little better. Like I'm not so, like I don't want to like not be here anymore.
Yeah.
And eventually, like after enough of that, I started feeling normal again. And looking back at it now, I have two thoughts on it. One is like, I now realize, hardwired in my brain at a very deep visceral level, is this association between happiness and exercise. That is wired in my fucking brain.
Yeah.
And I also realized though, of it, that could have been anything. It could have been a buddy going like, maybe you should try this weed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I probably would have been like, sure.
Feel better. Distracted at least.
Right, exactly. And so I think a lot about that of like, when people are in like a vulnerable space like that, of like, man, I hope you got good people around you. Because like, that could go either direction.
Yeah.
Because like, when you're in a situation where you are sad and miserable or depressed or whatever it is like, you could go either way.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time. And so like, to answer your question, like that's really at the core of all of it, is like, for me, I tie fitness and happiness together. It's what makes me feel good. It's what makes me just like show up as a better human.
Yeah.
And so like, the more I do it, the better I feel. And so I've just continued to go down that rabbit hole. I do think, and this is a total side note, we don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but like, I do also think too though, that like, sometimes that puts me at risk of, like if I get injured, right? And like I can't be physically active and I can't be moved the way that I want to move. Sometimes it scares me that that would mess with me a little bit, because I have so much identity wrapped in that.
Yeah.
Is like, think a lot about that, of like what we tie our identity to, and like just being careful about not being so tied to one thing, because if you lose that thing, all of a sudden like now you're in an identity crisis, right? And so I'm constantly thinking about like, and that's to your point, like your original question about like what I'm doing, what I'm focused on, like why do I work out, like all that stuff is like, that's why I'm not as so dead bent focused on like a fitness regimen right now, is because I realize so much of my identity is wrapped to that I need other things that I can tie my identity to. Definitely. Whether it's the podcasting or the business or the Austin community, is like, so like if one of those falls, I'm still okay. Right? And so like, yeah, there's a huge piece of me that's tied to that fitness identity, but it's definitely not my whole world anymore, like it used to be.
Right.
So
I think that it can be a distraction, even fitness, right?
Oh,
it's
100%.
like, it's really hard for, again, I can only speak for myself. It's really hard to come from being a top level athlete, even from going in a small town to somewhere like UT, where I was not a top level athlete anymore. I was close, but like I was immediately crushed. Even if I worked harder, there were still people better. And then for those guys, you go to the pro level, right? And then there's better people. Like there's always that next step, and it has to end.
Yep.
Even if you just work out all the time and you get old, like it can be a distraction if you let it be a distraction. And so having this like balanced lifestyle where you can put money or like focus into your job and your family, into your hobbies, whatever. I'm kind of at that same point where like, I need to work out, and there are things I like to do to push myself and see what I'm capable of, but I also want to build a business. I also want to have a family. I also want to like ride motorcycles, which I know you do too, like do all these other cool things. And so fitness is more of a tool to make sure that I'm balanced.
Totally.
Than it is a main focus.
Anything I feel like that's pushed to the extremes becomes unhealthy. Like I'm not a religious person in any way, shape, or form, but the one religion that I would say that I would associate with would be like more like the Buddhist approach. I feel like everything in Buddhism is more about that ebb and flow, the yin and yang, the good and bad, the middle way, as they often say.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, anything fitness especially is like, you see that a lot, right? Is like professional bodybuilders or really anything is like pushed to that level.
Yeah.
Starts to question the health behind it, right? It's like people love to like, fitness is healthy and exercise is healthy.
Right.
Maybe not if you push it to the extremes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do think that that's a key to greatness though, you know? And I'm sure you've done it too, where like you have a goal and sometimes it's just you got to get to that goal. Whether it's getting your degree or building a business or whatever. I think that there's that never rest component. It's not about like not sleeping, but I think that the way I live my life is there's these short sprints.
Totally.
Whether they're a few months or a few years, like you got to get there. And you look at the best and it's like, wasn't healthy. Ronnie Coleman can't walk, but he'll never not be in the limelight. You know, like generations to come will always know who Ronnie Coleman is.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about the word success, is which is why I so rarely use it, is because as a society, we love to talk about success as like the 1%ers, the people that are like the greatest athlete at X thing, or have built the greatest community in X arena. Is that like, we idolize that, but then you always like look at the other areas of their life and you're like, man, like you're in shambles.
Yeah, there's no balance.
Right.
There's nothing else.
In every other area of your life. But I love that idea of sprints. I recently just learned about thinking more like project-based. I think of everything now in projects. Like even like my latest podcast season that I'm pushing out now is like, I started the podcast show of like, I'm just gonna do this thing and I'm gonna continue to create content and like keep pushing the ball forward. And then I was like, man, like this leads to burnout. Like this leads to like not being fun anymore. This leads to like me not wanting to do it anymore. Versus if I do the exact same thing, but change the way I think about it from projects or sprints, like you said, it becomes fun again.
Yeah.
And like now I have like certain seasons where I focus on a very specific topic, I go hard on that topic, and then I rest, and then I chill, and then I don't do a little bit for a while, right? Is like understanding that ebb and flow, that back and forth. And so totally agree with that idea of like living in sprints. Like that's how humans are meant to live, man. Like sprint really hard, chase down the deer, eat the deer, chill for a while, and then go chase down another one, right? Like
it's a good point.
Like that's how we're meant to live.
It's a good point.
It's and I can't totally take credit for it. I mean, Naval is the one that talks about it, about like how we've created a system and a community and a culture of like, do the same thing at work every single day and like work your 9 to 5 and like stay in line. And it's like, that's not how humans are meant to live. Like that's a machine. You're literally talking about a machine. Like humans are meant to sprint and rest in all endeavors, right?
Which is why we have the machines.
Totally.
Why we have the websites.
So we don't have to do those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you were talking about doing an Ironman. What do you think the hardest physical thing you've done just in terms of fitness or maybe even school, man? I asked this question because there's a fitness component to my business, to my podcast, but it doesn't always have to be physical. It's that never rest component. What's the hardest thing you think you've done? Whether it's a very specific memory, a really, really hard workout, or a hard night studying, or whatever. What's the hardest thing you've done?
I'll give you two. One was stand-up comedy.
Nice.
So that was, there's something about like putting yourself out there on the chopping block to just, you know, bomb like nobody's business.
Yeah.
That is just insanely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it was so great to my personal development. It was unbelievable. I did it a few times and like, yeah, you get a chuckle here or there. But at the end of the day, it was like, no, it was painful. Like,
That wasn't your career?
No.
They were switching over to follow Dave Chappelle?
No, yeah. I would do more of it, honestly, but I underestimated. This is what was cool about it, though. It's like everything in life, man, is like you never realize the depth of something until you get into it. Everything.
Yeah.
Like coffee, ice cream, tables. Like until you get in the depth of it, it's like, holy cow. There's a whole world here I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Comedy, totally fell in that category, right? It's like learning how to have good stage presence, learning how to have little micro jokes between the lead jokes, like learning how to read the crowd, like learning how to have good stage presence, like all the things that you had no idea were going on when a really good comedian gets on stage. And it was like, damn, like I now respect that. I now see how much work goes into what they're doing. And what was cool about it though was that I definitely got funnier. I definitely wasn't like Dave Chappelle funny, but I definitely like in general conversations, I started to notice the uniqueness in the world, because that's really, honestly, like if I was to distill down really what comedy is, it's taking a mundane thing and flipping it on its head. That's all comedy is.
Yeah.
Is like they're taking a perspective on it that most people don't recognize, and it's like
Or don't want to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's funny. Like people love that, which is why you see so many comedians that also seem to have depression, which is such a common thing in comedy. It's because like they look at the world very differently.
Yeah.
They look at the world very like everything sucks and this table's rocks too much, and that's funny, right? And then the second thing I would say is more physical, and that would be competing in physique shows.
Nice.
I'll tell you the worst part about the whole thing, without telling like the whole story, is I never realized how cold a human could be. So when you're at like 5% body fat and you live in Minnesota and it's January,
Like physically cold.
physically to the bone cold
Yeah.
is the most production killer of all time. I never wanted to do anything. I wanted to have like 8,000 heat blankets on me because I was so cold. I wanted to sit in the sauna for 5 hours.
I could imagine. I've never heard that from anybody before. It's just not a common thing.
No.
But it makes sense. No body fat.
None.
No insulation. You're dehydrated. You're like no carbs. You have no energy in your body.
Dude, it was the worst.
And you're living in the winter
Yes.
all the time.
Yes. In Minnesota in November was when my show was.
Oh my God.
And yeah, that was definitely the hardest part, was like figuring out how to stay warm with 5% body fat in Minnesota.
For probably like a month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like literally I did 2 shows back to back that time, and it was like, one show and then the other one was like 3 weeks later in Kentucky, I think it was. No. Yeah. Kansas City? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But yeah, that was definitely probably
That's interesting.
One of the hardest things
That's
I've
interesting.
done.
I can picture it.
Because I always think about like, you're talking about doing Ironmans, and I always think about like all those like, what are they called? Like Navy SEAL style, like, you go and you like try to like do like what a Navy SEAL does of like, and I'm always like, I would die because of the cold.
Yeah.
Like I have PTSD from cold now.
That's a lot of them actually do. When a lot of the SEALs talk about it, they'll wake up with like Bud's nightmares from just being cold in the ocean.
I would totally.
The cold.
Same.
Yeah.
I could do the heat. Heat doesn't bug me at all.
Yeah.
Like give me 150. I don't care.
It's not painful. It's very uncomfortable, but it's not like painful.
Right.
Colder you get, you start to like feel everything. So.
Although I will tell you this fun short story though. As of recently, I started running the trail on Lady Bird here. Yeah. And the Raw Running Group. Are you familiar with them? So there's a running group that meets over here at Me9 Cat. I don't run either, but I only got into it because like I'm competitive, obviously like you are as well, and everyone runs this trail over here. Yeah. And I was like, fuck that, I'm not gonna be the only one running this trail. And so I started like running the trail with all these other people running it. And I went and joined the Raw Running Group, which is a massive group here in Austin. They've been running for literally like 15 years. They meet every, I think, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Nice. For the last like 15 years here in Austin. So if anyone's into running, check them out. But I went and started running with them. And this is like, I didn't realize how big of an effect heat can have on you. Being from Minnesota, I'm not used to like 100-degree heat a lot of the time, right? Yeah. And I was getting back from one of these runs and my groin started really hurting. And I was like, that's weird. And so we got back to Me9 Cat, which is where we meet, and went into the bathroom and I straight pissed blood. Like
just from a run here?
Yes.
Shit, that's rhabdo.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, what?
Jesus Christ. Like, what were you guys running?
Well, it was like a sprint style workout.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and I do a lot of training as it is, right? Like we literally just worked out at Audi Shores over here. I go there like every day, work out in the sun, sweating a lot. I'll walk the trail. I'll go on a run on the trail once in a while. And then I joined this Raw Running Group. And so like I was doing a lot of training, right? Yeah. Which is funny because like, as you has done an Ironman, I feel like that's way more. But I guess I just wasn't hydrated enough. Well,
then that's after months of training. One of our guys got rhabdo after the race.
Really?
We were all that way. Like by the end of the race, towards the end, while we're still going, like our backs were hurting and stuff like that. It's because our kidneys were like working overtime.
That's what I heard. Okay.
Yeah. So
because I was super dehydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're especially like I said, we're training for months and months and months trying to push that barrier a little further, just a little bit at a time. But you're dehydrated, your body starts processing proteins, and then you're adding all this sodium and like all these other electrolytes and things like that your kidneys are having to process. So you can be out here one day in the heat, run a mile, and just black out. You know?
See, it's crazy to me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I obviously learned that lesson the hard way, pissing blood.
Right.
Which is the worst part, which, side note, was actually, it was like fiery. It was painful.
Yeah.
It was like flames coming out. Yeah. Which I didn't know was a thing, but that was actually the worst part. Obviously, I was scared. I was like, oh shit, what's going on?
No idea what's going on.
Right, but like the actual physical, like of fire coming out of my urethra was the worst part.
Maybe it wasn't rhabdo. Maybe it was a wizard or something. Put a spell on you.
Because the funny part about that is one of my good buddies is a doctor, and I called him right away. And he didn't answer initially, so then I texted him and I was like, hey man, piss blood, need medical advice. And I get him on the phone and I was like, yeah dude, like what is going on? I was like, do I have a UTI? Like what is happening?
Yeah.
He's like, no, like guys like never get UTIs, like that's probably not the case. And he said the same thing you did, like stressed out kidneys, dehydrated, all the same stuff. He was like, just drink a bunch of water, get some sodium. I was like, all right.
Yeah. It's funny, I did get a UTI one time.
Really?
Yeah.
They are like 0.01% in males, so that's crazy. How did you get a UTI?
It's, telling a story, it feels gross, but like, I was training for something in college, so I was swimming every day. And I would like swim, shower, clean everything off, including my shorts and everything. I would just like wash the shorts in the shower, and then I'd put them in that little dryer thing that they have in locker rooms.
Yep.
And I guess I picked up some shit in the dryer thing, because I would go like 2 days at a time, because I'm washing everything off, and then I would hang them in my locker to dry. So in my head they were clean, and I guess that like that community bullshit spinny thing picked up something. Go to the doctor, it was the same thing. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. She's like, yeah, you have a UTI. She's like, I don't ever see this, but it's UTI. So put me on antibiotics, and same thing, I was peeing orange for like 3 days or whatever.
Yeah, because did you have to take pills that like relieve the...
I needed antibiotics. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah.
Well, the orange thing, you usually take like some other like supplement with it so that it's not so fiery in your urethra.
I don't remember.
No.
I don't remember. This was probably sophomore year of college, so like 8 years ago.
Because I don't think the antibiotics would turn your pee orange, but there is a supplement pill that you take, because I bought it. Because initially I thought I had a UTI, and so I bought it at the pharmacy, and it was a pill that I was taking because it did relieve like the fiery feeling of like what a UTI feels like.
It's kind of like cranberry juice.
Yes.
Kind of like drinking cranberry
yes. Because I remember it was orange.
Yeah.
Like it was the orangest urine I've ever seen in my whole, it was crazy.
Like you hadn't had water in a month?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But that's a supplement to like relieve the pain of...
I don't remember. I remember the antibiotics and like how I got it. Anyway.
Thank God for antibiotics, though, is all I gotta
guess,
say.
Yeah. It was rough.
That's crazy.
So, leaving that interesting story. What's next? What's next, either in business or the podcast or any fitness goals that you have?
Yeah. So I used to have a lot of health goals, and now that I don't anymore, everything for me now is based around impact. I'm just like really wanting to help and support people and build the businesses that I'm working on. And so like right now, for me, like my entire focuses are kind of in 3 realms. It's building the awesome community, which is what I do with like the meetup groups and everything. Is like the last one we had, I think there was probably 40 some people or something like that showed up. That's a huge component for me, is just like leaning hard into the Austin community. The second piece of it is that podcast show, of like continuing to bring on amazing guests, continuing to learn how to be a better interviewer, continuing to learn how to create a production and a show that's like people really get a lot out of. I actually just recently got a message from somebody, I literally just posted on my Instagram today, of this girl who she literally was like thanking me for the show because it was inspiring enough for her to start her own practice and to do her own thing as a physical therapist. And it's like shit like that where I'm like, fuck yes.
That's awesome.
Like, let's go. And then the third piece of it is the agency, is like really just that marketing side of it. That piece of it for me, I enjoy it, but not as much as I enjoy the podcast show. Like I enjoy the aspect of like helping people with their business and actually feeling like I'm moving key performance indicators on people's businesses. Like that's super fun for me.
Right.
But like, I do also see it as like a means to an ends. It's like, I don't think I'll do it forever.
Yeah.
I think really the end game for me is to be more consulting related, which is something I'm leaning into. Is like because of the podcast show, people recognize that I understand marketing and business in the health and fitness industry. So people reach out to me for consulting. And so like, that's probably the next move for me is like not actually doing the work of building the marketing stuff, but just being more of a consultant and helping them get the pieces in place and hire the right people.
Yeah.
So that's what's next for me.
We were talking about this earlier, kind of like the fun part of building content. Sorry, the sun's in your face. It's lit your face really, really well. It's beautiful lighting, but it gets you out of the sun.
I need a little tan.
Yeah. Creating the content is fun, and like connecting with people on a podcast is awesome, but it doesn't necessarily like make you money. So like having to develop the business side of things, it's not really a question there, but we were just talking about, you said you enjoy the podcast the most. I feel the same. It's trying to figure out how you can monetize on it and do it not to make money, but do it to sustain itself.
Totally.
And you and things like that. So good luck. I hope it goes well.
Yeah, dude, same. I mean, even for you with doing this YouTube stuff is like, I think it's important to create the outlet that you can sustain for a long time, because it's for sure a long play.
Yeah.
Of like, I've been doing the podcasting for well over a year now, and it's just now starting to gain traction, but it took a year to start gaining traction.
Right.
Like, that's a lot of episodes where it's like, I was doing it just because I enjoyed doing it.
Right.
And so for anybody else that's like creating content, people always ask me that of like, what should I do? Should I start a podcast? There's so many podcasts, there's so many YouTube, there's a lot of, yes, there is, but like, also keep in mind that most people quit. And so if you can choose the outlet that you can continue to outplay and continue to outperform in the long game, you'll win. Eventually.
Right.
Not initially, but eventually you will win.
Yeah.
It's because most people quit. And so like when people are trying to choose of like, should I write? Should I do a podcast? Should I do a video? It's like, choose the one you can stick to. That's the outlet.
Yeah.
And only you can decide that. And you only figure that out if you continue, or if you start doing it and then you're like, oh, okay, like I enjoy this. Great, that's the one for you. Now keep doing it.
So I think usually ask this question, I'm gonna say the answer is yes. Never Rest was initially Never Quit, like that was the brand. So that's kind of where it comes from, to your point. Of course people sleep. I don't recommend anybody not sleep. But like, don't rest until the job is done, right? And it may never be done. If you work in sprints, you've got that short period of time where you're like, okay, I've got to get this done. I've got to get all the way through. You don't rest in the middle of it. You rest when it's done. So, do you ever rest?
I feel like it's like, it brings up the classic, do I grit or do I quit kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot about that. I was recently told most things, if you choose to do them for 2 to 3 years. And I found that to be true in a lot of ventures of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm probably the worst person to ask about resting, because like I'm a notorious like bulldog. Is like I just bowl through things and keep going and keep pushing. I was actually just talking to, do you know Bray from Squatch?
Yes.
I was just talking to him about that, because he just took a 30-day road trip tour, and he's the same as you and I, of like, he never stops.
Yeah.
Like he's always go-getting. But it's a perspective issue. Is like, so to answer your question of like resting is like, I think it's less about like work and rest, and I think it's more about perspective, because like we went to breakfast yesterday and it was like an hour wait at Snooze. And in my head, the story that shows up is like, what a waste of time. What could I be doing with this hour? But that's a perspective issue.
Yeah.
Of like, no, I get an hour to just chill and rest and hang and be with my friends and enjoy this conversation, right? And so I think it's like, it's always about framing of like what is work and rest, because like I think we love, as especially Americans, love to define like, or look at rest as like a weakness of like this thing that like you shouldn't do. You should always be working and pursuing and chasing your next thing. But that's a framing issue of like, no, that's what's gonna facilitate the next venture of your life.
Definitely.
But yeah, so like rest for me, honestly, is like men's trips.
I like it.
We started organizing these probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they're week-long trips with a group of guys where we literally, the mission behind it is to create time and space to disconnect and to talk and think about the bigger things. And I'm always come back from that recharged. So,
A little think week.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I just watched actually the Bill Gates Netflix series.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's this exact same concept of creating that space to step back and go like, all right, what am I actually doing? Like, what do I actually care about? What actually matters? That was the trip to Smoky Mountains that we just did. But
won't get too deep into this, but you recently had your motorcycle stolen, right? You're a big rider.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. It's actually really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Are you gonna get another bike, do you think? We were talking about kind of renting them and things like that.
It's funny you bring that up. My plan was to get another one this fall when things warm up again.
Yeah.
But now that you just like open the world to the opportunity of renting these and the services that are out there to be able to rent them, I don't think I will. I think I own nothing. I own that bike that you see over there. I own my laptop, my phone, some clothing. That's it. That's all I own. And I love it.
Yeah.
I realized that the less I own, the happier I am. And that's why I even did a motorcycle, is because like even having a car for me felt heavy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, a motorcycle gives me just enough to be able to get around and do the things I want to do without the like having to own a vehicle and everything else that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't think I will now that I realize like I don't need it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
You'll still ride.
Oh, 100%.
We'll get out and ride sometime.
100%. I love riding. That's a whole other story, actually learning, because I crashed my initial motorcycle when I first got into it. That's a whole other story. But yeah, I definitely love riding though, for sure.
Well, we'll get into that story on the next one. I'm gonna wrap it up here, my man.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being on. I will tag all of your stuff. I'll put it down in the description. The Health Hustle, Andro Brands, and then your Instagram, Corey Hiben.
Yep.
What's your best place to reach you? What's your Instagram handle?
You nailed it. It's
Corey
my name.
Hiben.
Yep, it's my name. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, just because like that's where my community is. Those are the people that I connect with in terms of like a lot of business owners on there. But yeah, either one, DM me.
Perfect.
For sure.
Thank you, man. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, we'll see you in the next one. Never rest.
Oh,